Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our council meeting on Monday, September 11th of 2023. We are starting at 6:30 p.m. this evening and jumping right into our motion to convene in a closed meeting. And the recommendation is that a closed meeting be held on August, oh, my apologies. It is no longer August, on September 11th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. in accordance with Section 239(2)H and Section 239(2)I to consider the following. Confidential information supplied in confidence from the Province of Ontario, which is Section 239(2)H. Information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board by Canada, a province, or territory or a crown agency of any item, and Section 239(2)I, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization. To get this on the floor, may I please have it moved? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favor? And that is carried. We will be in closed. And Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us again after closed. I did want to make one note before we technically reconvene and open, and that is a technical note on the agenda. There was a recommendation for us to have a closed meeting on Friday at the Region of Waterloo. It was a joint training session that has been postponed. The region postponed it, so although it still remains on the agenda, we're not acting on it because we don't yet have the new date. It will still be happening, just awaiting the new date. So we will be skipping that agenda item. And now we will reconvene in open, and the recommendation is that council reconvenes in open at 7 p.m. May I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favor? And that carries. As for moments of reflection, we have two particular items I want to touch on. The first one is that today is the 22nd anniversary of 9/11. And thinking about it, I was quite young when it happened. I was in grade 2, and I actually still remember, though, going home for lunch that day and seeing on the news the World Trade Towers being crashed into, and we actually were kept home from school for the rest of the day. And I distinctly remember a pre-9/11 world, and then very much so a post. Certainly in the world of how we travel and security measures and everything that has subsequently happened since. So just in honor of that being the 22nd anniversary, where over 3,000 people were killed, if we could just take a moment of silence, please. Thank you. And our next item is about Terry Fox, as the annual Terry Fox Run is coming up this Sunday. And Terry Fox was a true Canadian hero who embarked on the Marathon of Hope to raise awareness and funds for cancer research. His legacy continues to inspire people worldwide, and his determination to make a difference in the lives lives on in the Terry Fox Foundation. So the annual run has become a fall tradition in Canada, with more than 650 communities, big, small, urban, rural, English and French, fundraising for cancer research. The run also gives communities the chance to come together and celebrate the impact that they can have for a force of good. So to get ready for the Day of Inspiration and Unity as we come together on September 17th to celebrate Terry Fox in our wonderful community, be sure if you're able, you can still register, so lace up your running shoes or grab your walking buddy and participate in the Terry Fox Run or Walk. Whether you're a seasoned athlete or out for leisurely strolls, everyone is welcome to join and contribute to the cause. And also just cheering on all of the kids that are going to be doing the run with their schools locally throughout the week. And if you want to make a donation or register yourself to join the run or walk, you can do so by visiting terryfox.org. And I will now call on Councillor Cressman to provide the territorial land acknowledgement, please.
We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cressman. And just on the land acknowledgement, I just wanted to also acknowledge that last Friday on the 1st of the month, Councillor Cressman, Councillor Martin, and staff and myself, as well as some community members, were joined by Clarence and Ben from Crowshield Lodge to raise our Truth and Reconciliation flag, which is up for the entire month of September. And it was a really wonderful event. We learned a lot from Clarence and Ben. They were very open in sharing a lot of knowledge, and we also are going to be hosting something that still is in the works, but for National Truth and Reconciliation Day on the 30th of September. So please do stay tuned for information coming out on that. Council, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? No? Okay, seeing none. There are no additions to the agenda, and the adoption of the agenda is as presented to adopt it for September 11th, noting, as I already mentioned, the one recommendation of close not happening. May I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Minutes for the previous meeting, which would be for the August 28th regular council meeting. Again, minutes to be adopted as presented. May I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? That also carries unanimously. We have no public meetings this evening nor presentations. And the consent agenda item is item 11.1. Before we move it, does anybody want to remove any consent agenda items, noting that we will not be discussing the items? No? All right. So then may I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman, and all those in favor? And that carries. And on to reports. So the recommendation for item 12.1 is that report CS 2023-18, investigation of off-leash dog park in Sir Adam Beck Park, be received for information. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Sadhu, seconded by Councillor Martin. And I will now call on Director Catania to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor Salin. Good evening. This report is the investigation of the off-leash dog park in Sir Adam Beck Park. Currently, we have one off-leash dog park that exists in William Scott Park in New Hamburg. This location in New Hamburg is well utilized and approximately 6.5 kilometers from Sir Adam Beck Park. Two site considerations for Sir Adam Beck Park were Site A, which is in the northwest corner, the other Site B being in the northeast corner of the park. Both have potential challenges with close proximity to residential. Financial considerations for an additional off-leash park in Sir Adam Beck Park would be about $105,000 for capital and an annual operating of $9,500. Happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Cressman.
Yes, through you, Mayor. In reviewing this, I get the tone that it really neither positions make sense, and that I was wondering how far afield you cast your net to determine if there's other locales, or I got the impression that we should wait and see if there's a more appropriate location. Is that basically what this report is indicating to us?
Through you, Mayor Salin, to Councillor Cressman, that's correct. We would like to take a look and investigate further outside of Sir Adam Beck Park that would be a little bit more appropriate for an off-leash dog park that would be easily accessible for the community, but also as well that, you know, for the season that are being used for, it's not going to be too disruptive to any neighborhoods.
Councillor Sadhu.
Through the Mayor to Director Catania, thank you very much for the work you've put into this report. Echoing what my fellow councillor has said, once reading the report, I did come to a realization maybe I should have, in my original motion, had said somewhere in Baden, not specifically Beck Park. If there is another suitable location in Baden that we can possibly utilize that would have less interference with residential and the opportunity to have a larger park and some more things surrounding it.
Through you, Mayor Salin, to Councillor Sadhu, there are a different couple of options. I don't really want to share them at this point. I'd make a recommendation for council to have a staff report back with a couple other options at a future council meeting so that it could be tabled for potential further 2024 capital.
Councillor Stu.
And to your point, yeah, we'll do that. I'd like to raise a motion that we direct staff to come back at a future meeting with a couple more suitable options and we can kind of go from there then.
Just to clarify for a timeline, do you want it to be done in time to consider for the 2024
And-
capital?
In time to be done for the 2024 capital budget.
Any questions or comments to that motion? Councillor Cressman?
Yes, and this is just me thinking off the top of my head, and I do that periodically because of my bald head. But I would assume that in play are township-owned properties that might be outside the boundary of Baden. We have a trail system that's on the Baden Hill. We have some newly acquired land there. I mean, those, I'm not suggesting or directing you in those directions, but I would imagine those are all in play in terms of considering this. I see what happens in Guelph when I drive periodically to Guelph and go in the Hanlon. There's a dog park on the south end of Guelph, and people congregate there and walk their dog into a forested area, etc. So I think there's options that would be conducive where we're not, bothering immediate neighbors. So I just want to make sure we're not restricting you in this motion to look broader.
Councillor Martin?
A point of procedure through you, Mayor Sallin. Do we need a seconder to the motion to discuss the motion?
We do, and I was just
So then I second it.
it. Thank you. Okay, so that is now moved, seconded. Any other comments beyond Councillor Cressman? Councillor Wilkinson?
Yes, through the chair to Director Catania. Just curious, I know when reading the report you had talked about sort of further developing this idea along with the Parks and Rec master plan. So are we looking to be on track for the capital budget 2024, or is this probably more realistic to be a 2025 purchase?
Through you, Mayor Sallin, to Councillor Wilkinson, I think there's a couple options you can look at this. I mean, we could look at doing a placeholder for 2024 for the off-leash dog park, knowing that the results of the updated community services master plan will be forthcoming sometime with a final draft to council in the summer of 2024. And at that time, if the results of that master plan indicate, a specific location, for instance, of an off-leash dog park in the Baden area, this is where staff can actually take a look at tendering and getting going on that project right near the end of 2024. In the report, I would say, though, putting in the update to the community service master plan is important. And I say, and I have that in there only because when we looked at Sir Adambeck Park, there is a portion of that northwest quadrant where, if it's identified that we need, for instance, an additional soccer pitch or a mini or something of that nature, we just didn't want to, handcuff us when it comes to, some of those potential newer facilities that we need to add with our growth. So that was the reason for the master plan. And I also know that in the master plan piece too, there will be that consultation, and it'll be going out to the community, not just with regular traditional sports facilities, but you take a look at our trail systems, our off-leash dog parks. And I want to make sure that we're able to be accurate with what we're providing for the community.
Very good. Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you. And through the chair, thank you, Director Catania. But yeah, to echo what my colleagues are saying, I think maintaining that flexibility to host events or potentially add a third ball diamond or a soccer pitch, as well, potentially, make sure that we're preserving those walnut trees there as noted in your report, and also mitigating any risk associated with that is wise. So, thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments on Councillor? All right, so all those in favor of the motion to have staff to come back with recommendations within the Baden and greater potential area and have that included as a placeholder in the 2024 budget potentially for options, obviously pending the master plan. I think I've summarized what that is. That's what we're voting on. All those in favor. And that carries unanimously. Thank you. And so now we have to also do the main motion, which is to receive this for information. So we have already moved and seconded that. If we could please have a vote, all those in favor for receiving for information. Thank you, and that also carries. On to agenda item 12.2, and the recommendation is that Noble Canine Kennel applications be approved, subject to the applicant's completion of the following conditions to be met to the satisfaction of the supervisor of municipal law enforcement prior to issuance of the kennel license. Part 1 is that all kennel facilities must be upgraded to meet all kennel conditions listed in Section 15 of the Township of Wilmot's Dog and Kennel Bylaw. Item 2 is where such upgrades require a building permit, all work must be completed and all inspections must be finalized by the Township's Building Department building inspectors. Section 3 is inspection completed by the supervisor of municipal law enforcement to ensure all requirements have been met. And step 4 is all applicable licensing fees have been paid in full, which would be 20 dogs times $25, which is a $500 fee. May I please have a mover to get this on the floor? Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cressman. And any questions or comments that council have of staff? Councillor Wilkinson.
Yes, through the chair, just to confirm, at this point, we've still not heard from any members of the public of any concerns whatsoever.
Thank you, through the mayor. No, at this point, we've not received any comments from the public at all. And the recommendations that were put forth to you were just from the feedback provided from the public meeting, last council meeting.
And my apologies, Ms. Mayor. I was told that you were not going to be here this evening. Is there anything else that you would like to speak to on this report?
Thank you, through the mayor. Surprise, I'm here again. But no, I don't have anything additional to say. That was the one thing I was going to mention that Councillor Wilkinson brought up, that we haven't heard anything from the public at all. But if there's any further questions regarding this kennel, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Very good. Any other questions or comments, councillors? Seeing none, we will now call the vote. So all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. On to report 12.3, and the recommendation is that report COR 2023-58 be received, and further, that council adopts policy GP 2300X relating to councillor use of civic space as attached to report COR 2023-58 as attachment 1. So to get this on the floor, may I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson, and I will turn it over to our interim director, Bunn, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. So tonight, Council, I have returned with a report back on some further information related to the use of facilities by members of Council. At our last meeting, you'll recall that Council had inquired about a dedicated space that could be used for meetings. As the report outlines, and as Council's probably well aware, our space is a little bit limited in terms of individual offices, and I know that was an option that was discussed, or rather than individual, an office that could be used. I don't want to mischaracterize, but staff did work with our colleagues in community services, and were able to identify a number of spaces between both the administrative complex and at the WRC that would be available for councillors' use during office hours, but then after hours, and I know that was of primary concern. Between staff, there has been lots of discussion on how we can facilitate that in terms of security and making sure that council has the tools that they would need to access the facilities, and all that has been worked out and applied to the policy to enable after-hours use particular of our facilities by council. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair. Director Bunn, when is the expected implementation of this policy if it were to pass?
That's a very good question. Through you, Mayor, I'm just looking at our Director Catania. I believe in terms of some of the security steps that need to be taken, it could be relatively soon. I don't think this is a month-long process, but I'd look to the other director to answer that question.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Salonen, and to Councillor Wilkinson. This probably could be accomplished within a week or so. Just have to figure out the really the access control into this facility, but the provisions and procedures for the WRC will be in place.
Any other questions or comments, councillors? Okay, seeing none, I will now call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. On to report 12.4, and the recommendation is that report COR 2023-58 be received for information. And I will again turn it over to Interim Director Bunn to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. Again, Council, this is a follow-up report from our last meeting, particularly with respect to two questions that Council had raised for the procedural bylaw. The first was to revise the timing of delegations from 5 minutes back to 7 minutes, so that change has been made to the draft bylaw before you. And the second was to look in a little bit further to the questions of placing some limitations on delegations in respect to residents, or if the individual is a Wilmot citizen or not, or works in Wilmot. And as you can see in the report, the recommendation is that we don't pursue that option, just given that there's concerns, of course, with the privacy aspect that I'd mentioned at the last meeting, but also with respect to some of our public meetings, like planning meetings, for instance, where the Planning Act is pretty clear that any person who registers to speak would have to be able to delegate. So we wouldn't want to overstep on the bounds of those acts that we are required to follow. I'm happy to take any questions that Council may have.
Just before questions, to get this on the floor, may I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Martin. Questions, councillors? Councillor Wilkinson.
Yes, through the chair. Thank you, Director Bunn. I think maybe just to clarify, I don't recall that we actually ever gave direction regarding the limitation. I think it was more so just a discussion. But I have a couple questions here regarding just the final draft. I was first wondering just the rationale behind striking the executive definitions in Section 1 and Section 3 for defining the mayor's role as chief executive officer, as well as the further duties and scope of role associated with directorship, council, and CAO. And then finally, just to point out in Section 4.9, the committee referred to as the Ad Hoc Budget Committee. I just want to make sure while we're in midst of drafting this that we go to the name I think we agreed upon, Finance and Budget Committee. That is all.
Thank you, Councilor, and through you, Mayor. Great catch. Thank you for catching that. A very large document, so I'm very surprised if that's the only one. Then I'll accept that as a win. No, when it comes to the executive terms, as you've referenced, 2 points on that. The first is that a lot of the roles and responsibilities are already defined by the Municipal Act, so redundancies in terms of what the Act says were removed from the bylaw itself. The further point on, and this gets more into specifics, but in terms of directors, those roles are all outlined within contract agreements, which ties into the next point about the bylaw being more about procedural in nature and less so much about roles and responsibilities of individual members and those who attend council meetings. So that's why they were removed, simply out of, I don't want to use the word efficiency, but out of making sure the document is truly what it's there for.
Good. Any other questions there, councillors? Okay, seeing none, we do have 2 delegations registered for this item. So just a reminder that all delegations will be given 7 minutes to speak, and please conduct yourself in appropriate manners, which include not interrupting councillor, staff, or other delegates, no derogatory statements about councillor, staff, or others, or hate speech or defamatory comments, as that will result in immediate muting or removal from the meeting. Having, I'm pretty certain, seen both of you before at council, I'm not concerned, but just going through the motions and reading what I have before me. So our first delegation this evening is going to be from Kevin Thomason. If you'd like to come up, Kevin, and you'll have 7 minutes if I could speak. Wow.
Excellent. Honorable Mayor, members of council, and guests. My name is Kevin Thomason, and I'm the owner of 1115 Cedar Grove Road here in Wilmot. I've been a Wilmot Township resident for decades, and I've frequently presented at this council, as staff will attest. I also regularly delegate at other council chambers across Waterloo Region and throughout Ontario. While on the surface, these procedural bylaws seem technical, mundane, and boring, as exciting as watching paint dry, to quote from the last meeting, these are in fact the basis and foundation for so much of all business here at the Township. They set the tone and demeanor of things. How accessible and approachable is council? How intimidating or easy is it to appear as a delegation? Is it even possible to appear as a delegation? Is this regarded as a friendly place that is welcoming to citizens and businesses, or is it a bureaucracy consumed by its own needs? Appearing before many different municipalities, it is astonishing how different the experience can be. Some are easy to work with and welcome the public with open arms and easy, flexible processes for registering as a delegation, friendly welcomes to everyone in the room, continuous calls for people present to speak up and make their ideas and opinions known to council. Other municipalities, however, seem to view the public with disdain and seemingly do almost everything possible to avoid all interactions with their constituents. Little information is provided in advance of meetings, with almost no advance notice or warning. Staff aren't available to discuss issues in the 1 or 2 days that the public has between the release of the agenda and council package and the actual meeting. It is difficult or impossible to register as a delegation. The audience present for a meeting are ignored, and no call for anyone present wishing to speak for a topic is ever issued. Few votes are ever recorded, and minutes afterwards are so vague and brief they are almost useless. Hopefully, we can do better. These procedural bylaws are far more important than most people will ever realize to the well-being of our entire community, because we all know the importance of civic engagement, and we all want to live in an active, engaged, vibrant community. Unfortunately, over the decades, in my experience, Wilmot Township has been one of the most difficult municipalities to work with. I've been refused as a delegation because I called 4 days before a council meeting and not 5. I've been refused to be allowed to present because it was deemed not important enough, or apparently the agenda was too full, only to see the meeting adjourned before 8 p.m. I've stood before Wilmot with urgent information about emergency services that could be life-saving to area residents after 2 of my neighbors had just died in a fire days earlier, and be refused to address council and turned away. I've stood at this podium here begging to be allowed to present to this council on too many occasions. It is humiliating and demeaning to stand here while councillors debate if they even want to hear from you, let alone how many minutes you may be permitted when you have already spent hours or days preparing and are trying to raise an important issue. I've never once had to do that at any other municipality. I've had handouts refused by Wilmot because they weren't submitted days in advance. Audiovisual presentations rejected because they could contain offensive material and hadn't been reviewed by what seemed more like a censorship panel than the helpful staff one would hope for when making a stressful presentation. I'm not aware of any other municipality with this censorship approval requirement days in advance. And in the thousands of delegations I've seen over the years, I've never once seen a presentation containing anything that I felt should have been censored or removed. It's ironic that this current staff report, dealing with the recent questions from our councillors on how to limit citizens from other communities from appearing here, and how to reduce the time permitted for even our own citizens to speak, is printed on letterhead that states Wilmot is a cohesive, vibrant, and welcoming countryside community, becoming the only municipality in Ontario to prohibit neighbors and others interested enough to appear from being able to delegate and address you sure doesn't sound very welcoming. Even as recently as May and June of 2022, I did presentations to every Waterloo Region municipality on the regional official plan with local Wilmot farmer Mark Reeser and renowned planning expert Kevin Eby. It is extremely troubling to think that a global expert like Kevin Eby, who is willing to spend an evening of his life here addressing this council, would be turned away in the future and not allowed to delegate because he doesn't live in Wilmot. Our community would be so much poorer without his knowledge and insight that he was willing to share as a concerned citizen. It wasn't that long ago that delegations here in Wilmot and every council chamber in Waterloo Region were given 10 minutes to present. As populations have grown, different communities have taken different approaches. Some cut delegation time limits to 7, even 5 minutes. On some simple issues, that may be sufficient. But on complex planning issues that may have involved years of work, 5 minutes or even 7 minutes isn't nearly sufficient. It can be amazing the difference even just a few additional minutes can make, particularly if you are absurdly limited to only being able to speak once on an issue that could impact you for the rest of your life. I applaud the City of Waterloo, that is by far the most welcoming area municipality, and as a result has one of the most engaged populations. They still allow every delegation the full 10 minutes, And rather than trying to limit their constituents, they increased their meeting times, not just having a single bi-weekly council meeting, but also having additional afternoon and morning council meetings if needed. I would strongly suggest, as I have at this podium in the past, that Wilmot review the amazing City of Waterloo Community Engagement Guidelines. Or better yet, invite Peter Mansell, the retired school teacher who was the catalyst and lead author, to come explain the ways his community worked with their council and every department of the city to explore ways to increase citizen engagement with these guidelines. It troubles me how many meetings I've had over the years with Wilmot clerks like Barb McLeod and Don Middlehartz, and how many delegations myself and my neighbor have made trying to improve the Wilmot procedural bylaws. Things have been improving, but we need to ensure Wilmot doesn't revert back to being known as Will Not. I hope that my home municipality will become the most welcoming council, and these procedural bylaws are moving in the right direction. However, they could go much, much further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I did just want to clarify that we have not decided to limit people from coming.
Yes.
Nor have we decided to move down the minutes from what they were in the past bylaw. I just wanted to
Good. And I understand that there's no decision even tonight, that this is just for information only, so hopefully there'll be time to ponder that even more, so, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that.
No, thank you.
But thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
Also, I am sorry to learn about your past experiences, but certainly I know, as you're also aware, but not everyone probably is, we do have a fully new clerk's department from probably a lot of your past experiences that you were referencing.
Yeah.
And they're working tirelessly to improve our procedural bylaw, but also just improve general procedures. So thank you very much for bringing forward your recommendations, and I would love to hear more about the ideas that you do have, because as you said, it was pointed out as information.
Yes, well, thank you. And I do have to admit, the current procedural bylaws are a big improvement. I have very few points in here of things that have changed section 12.4.3 or 7.2. I did find several typos, including a couple that are fairly serious. One place where it states unanimous rather than anonymous. You do want unanimous decisions. You probably don't want anonymous delegations. So there's some words in there that need to be corrected, but that shows how thorough myself and other citizens have gone through things to be catching these. But don't get me wrong, they're definitely moving in the right direction. However, we need to make sure that we end up at the top of the pile and such. So yeah.
I most certainly agree. Thank you very much. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I appreciate Mr. Thomason or Kevin, I'm not sure how you
either
prefer to be addressed. I appreciate you coming. I guess I would be curious, and I don't know how much time we have in the meeting, I'd be curious if there are more examples. I understand that the City of Waterloo, from your point of view, would be a good municipality to study and learn from, and I'm happy to learn more about their procedures. From my point of view, you're certainly welcome, as are all citizens from Wilmot Township and elsewhere, to come, and I'm interested. So I think if you have any more specifics you want to give in terms of what we've been doing wrong and what we could do better, I'd certainly be interested in hearing that.
Sure. Just a quick couple points off the top of my head, and indeed we can sit down for a more in-depth conversation. Sometimes it's even just the smallest nuances of things that send a message. Wilmot is one of the only, every council now you can present to using Zoom. Wilmot is one of the only councils that uses the Zoom webinar software that locks you out in a separate room that you can't come into until the clerks let you in, and even then you're limited on what you can do. You can't post your own presentation. You have to say next slide, next slide, next slide. Other councils don't do that. They use just the regular Zoom meeting software. You can see all the other people in the meeting. You can you can present from your own computer. You can advance your own slides. There's a trust. But if somebody as big as the region of Waterloo can trust all their people and all their delegations to use the regular Zoom software, Why can't the Wilmot Township trust people to use the regular Zoom software? Why do we have to use the webinar software where we're locked out in a separate room and are so limited from any feature or doing anything? I was told it was in case somebody said a profanity or in case all these other things, but why does Wilmot feel that it needs to have so much more control that even the region and much larger municipalities elsewhere in the province feel that they don't need to have and that they're willing to trust their citizens? So I think that's just one, but it's a small thing that just sets a tone right from the onset. Sometimes even just trying to phone to register as a delegation. I had a situation here just within the past year, although not involving staff that is currently as clerks here, where I was trying to register to delegate. And I had tried phoning a clerk, I had tried emailing the clerk, I had left several messages for the clerk, and never heard anything back. Time was getting close to the meeting, I was getting quite panicked. I finally, on about the third time that day, managed to reach the clerk in person, and I said, oh, well, we don't take delegations through that, you have to go online and use our online form. Well, then again, other municipalities, it doesn't matter whether you phone the clerk, email the clerk, or use the online form, you get registered. To be told that I could only use the online form and that not even get any response from these other messages that I'd been trying to reach was not very welcoming to me as a citizen, and it certainly was an increase in community engagement. And so, I don't mean to be too harsh, that might have just been a bad day, a bad week, or whatever, but these are just kind of some minor anecdotes or just little things. It's those little nuances that start to set a tone, and when you see too much of it, it starts to set a pattern. And, these are just things that I think we could be striving towards. And it sounds minor, it sounds like these are little things, but over time they set patterns, they set a tone. There even could be other things too. Just even, for example, when council packages are made available. As a citizen, you don't often know. You may know here within these walls what you've been working on for months or weeks. Often, we're just caught by surprise when all of a sudden an agenda comes out and something we didn't even know was coming is listed on that agenda. And egads, it's a 300-page report that we have, hopefully that agenda came out on Wednesday, but often we don't see it till noon on Friday. And when you get a couple 100-page council package at noon on a Friday, you now only have your weekend. If you have a question on there, good luck getting hold of staff on a weekend. Although I must admit, Harold has responded to my emails on weekends, and it's great to see. But it's one of those things where you've got a meeting on Monday, and you're now scrambling Monday morning to get a hold of that clerk to get on the agenda for that evening, and then to be told, well, sorry, you actually had to have your materials in a business day in advance. Well, I didn't even know about this on Friday. What do you mean it's too late now to get that? And then again, that's another thing where with the censorship, I'm not quite sure why Wilmot needs that full business day. Even at the region, I can walk up to the clerk 3 minutes before the meeting with my USB key, and he or she will load my presentation to go up on the screen for the room. And that can be very helpful to me as a citizen. If I just learned about this at noon on Friday, scrambled over the weekend, didn't get a hold of staff till Monday morning, still trying to do my presentation throughout Monday, if I can actually just come 10 minutes early and hand it to the clerk and get it up on the screen. And that. So, there's one business day sounds great when you've got lots of lead time, but when you've only got one day, that one business day doesn't work. Now, I have to admit, this is a huge improvement. It used to be here at Wilmot that it was required to register as a delegation 5 days in advance of the meeting, when the agenda didn't even come out until 3 days in advance of the meeting. So you actually had to be psychic to guess what was coming on the agenda to know to register it before the agenda came out. And it was just so absurd, and I can't tell you how often we spent arguing with the clerk over that absurdity, and they didn't seem to see the dichotomy of having to be psychic and that. So things have come a long way, but there's still room.
Through you, Mayor Sallin, and I appreciate what you're saying because I actually agree with you. From my point of view, we ourselves don't find out
Yes.
until you find out, as you're describing. And so we have been talking about this. We've been working away, and I really appreciate CAO Chambers for the information that you're trying to give us so that you're giving us more advance notice. And we've been discussing this very issue because it is important. And you're right. I think on a lot of topics, we do need more notice. And I think the more notice in the public as well as in the council would be beneficial. So I agree with that. I think you're making some excellent points.
Yeah, it would be ideal, particularly, some of these 300-page packages weren't done the night before. Somebody's been working on it for 3 months. If they could even just start to post some of that stuff earlier or give you a heads up it's coming or that sort of thing. There's also just other minor things that even just sometimes asking the room, is there anyone here who'd like to speak to this issue, could be important. I have had times, now admittedly this was about 10 or 12 years ago, where I literally have arrived at this council chambers, sat here as the only citizen in the room the entire night, was not acknowledged in any single way, and the meeting adjourned without anyone ever once speaking to me or asking why I was here, despite wanting to speak to an item that I'd been refused by the clerk to be allowed to speak to on the agenda. And so sometimes just that subtle of pulling the room it can be very powerful, particularly for a citizen who might not have ever been here before, or you might be hesitant and has just come to try to figure out
Through you, Mayor Sallin, I think that's a good point. How do we engage the public? And when we have voter apathy, when we have less than 50% of people voting. Now, notably in Wilmot Township, we had a higher percentage, but it was still under 50% of people voting. So I agree. These points are well made in terms of encouraging the public to be involved and engaged in the process. Just out of curiosity, when did you give notice of your delegation for tonight?
I went through the council package on Sunday because, unfortunately, with Ford Fest and the provincial protests, my Friday and Saturday were highly consumed, so I didn't get a chance to go through things till Sunday. It was about 11 o'clock last night, Sunday night. I was able to go online, use the online form, since I know that's what I have to do now, and filled out the form, and the clerk responded back to me by about 10 o'clock this morning, which was fantastic, with an email saying, like to confirm that you've got your 7 minutes and you're on. So that worked very well. And I made sure I respond back to confirm that I had got their notice. I did know I had 7 minutes. I had no presentation to have to upload or anything like that.
Through you, Mayor Sallin, and I'm glad that you were able to come and that the notice was not that significant, and so you were able to register today. Yes. I would like it if we could get, as councillors, information about who is delegating. Yes. And so I think that would be something that I would certainly appreciate. I'd like to put that on record, that I would very much like to know in advance if we're going to get delegates.
Yes, and in fact, that was a brilliant comment that you'd made at the last meeting, asking for the delegation list. In fact, I've got it in my notes here, and I'm glad you reminded me of it. Even as a delegate, it is very helpful to see the delegation list, because if there's 15 people speaking on a topic, it's really helpful to know if you're the second speaker or the 14th. And it can be really confusing if you don't have that. And in fact, other municipalities regularly provide the delegation list, and they'll even list the ones that have come on and late and only get 5 minutes instead of 7 or whatever. But I've asked in the past Wilmot clerks for the delegate list and be told it's not possible due to confidentiality or other reasons. So if that's something that Wilmot could work towards, like other municipalities do, that would be great. And I was very pleased to see, Mr. Bunn, your positive reaction to Councillor Martin's comment of that the last meeting. So kudos.
So CAO Chambers would like to make a comment.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mayor, to Council and to Mr. Thomason. I certainly recognize that attending council meetings as a delegate is one way to engage on issues of the municipality, but I will say that the former council and this council have committed to increasing citizen engagement through other means and forums. So we will be having our community engagement and communication strategy coming to council next week, which will allow us to have an opportunity to engage the community on issues that may be coming forward to council, or projects, things like that, looking at multiple different forums to reach as many citizens as we can. Fantastic. So please pay attention to that. And I think, we recognize that we can do better in engaging citizens and are making efforts to do that.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Councillors, any other questions or comments that were not covered for our delegate here? Councillor Cressman.
So being the one to get my fingers slapped for suggesting paint dries, certainly I understand the importance of procedure bylaws. I knew Roberts backwards and forwards because I had chaired a number of boards, and gaining an appreciation of the nuances of the municipal act and what it requires. I guess the question that I would react to is some of my colleagues here and myself have full-time jobs. I don't know what your time commitment is, but the ability to have additional meetings would be something we would we would have to struggle with. But I see the importance. So, being retired and only farming for fun, and not having to come up to your neck of the woods to farm my sister's farm since she sold it.
Yes.
But anyhow, all to say, excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. I think we have to balance that against the time commitments to our councillors that are still fully engaged in a 40-hour work week.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Kevin, I want to thank you for your delegation this evening. I feel like I know you because I've seen you on my screen many times delegating, and you always do a very good job. You certainly made some good points tonight that we need to take back and look at. But I did want to, you mentioned a couple of times, and I did want to make sure we know that you have found a distinct improvement as of late with the new clerks and the way the office is. Okay, great.
Yes.
So I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, without a doubt, things are moving in the right direction.
Great.
And as I say, in previous times, I actually pulled out the delegation I did on April 19th, 2019 on the Wilmot procedural guidelines. And if I was to read that presentation to you, it was a lot of corrections in, 4.3.3 should read this, 4.7.1, you've got to correct that. There's not much of that because they've progressed in a big way. The main concerns were more just the idea of some of the comments that have come out recently regarding the reducing the time from 10 minutes to 7 to 5, or limiting who can appear here, or things like that. And those are the main concerns that I wanted to ensure I addressed tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Excellent.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah.
Yes, through the chair. Kevin, thank you for coming tonight. And I think a lot of your points are well taken. And to piggyback on some of my colleagues here, I think we've started to move the pendulum in the right direction, or move things in the right direction with regards to the procedural bylaw in terms of maintaining the time as opposed to reducing it, which is something we discussed last meeting.
Yep.
And I think we've made some major improvements in terms of registration for delegating and so on and so forth. But I do just want to clarify, there seems to be a bit of a misconception out there that we somehow gave direction at the last meeting to really dig in and look at barring non-residents. It was purely a conversation. And, to your point, you look at Kevin Eby or Mark Reiser, certainly one of the comments I made was that I value the opinions of township residents more than I do individuals that don't live here. But at the same time, there's a ton of value in having experts and leaders in thought come in and speak to us. And by no means did I ever discount that. So I just want to be very clear. And ultimately, we came to a conclusion that was fairly spot on. It was that, no, this isn't something we're going to pursue. It's just having that conversation. Is it something? And through debate, through conversation, we determined that that wasn't a course of action to follow. So, but thank you for coming tonight and pointing out some of the things that we can continue to improve on. And I hope that we take that information and do so.
Well, you're welcome, and you're correct. And I think one of the big opportunities we have here, it's a little bit of a challenge, but also an opportunity. We have an entirely new council with a new mayor, with new clerks, which means that we've got a bit of a blank slate in many ways, and not discounting staff and all the experience and decades here. But I think there's an opportunity for us to really, in some ways, even pole vault forward or do a quantum leap. And certainly, I see a tremendous opportunity, and that's why I took the time to spend hours today drafting this and come here tonight, was because I felt there was good potential and need an opportunity. So,
Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Sallin, and I appreciate, Councillor Wilkinson, your point, and your word conversation is a good one. We have, as a new council, been told that these chambers are where we need to have discussions. And so as I heard the discussion in our previous meeting, it was a discussion. It wasn't trying to say we don't like people who aren't in Wilmot Township. I did receive a call on that saying, you better not stop people who are outside of Wilmot Township from talking at township meetings. And I said, we didn't make any decision. It was purely a conversation. And so I think we're trying to have that, that we're trying to have that procedure. We're trying to create a medium where we're having conversation. And it was in that spirit that the discussion was held.
Excellent, excellent. No, it's great to see those conversations happening here. There was a time where it seemed the goal of some of the council meetings here were to get out into the parking lot as fast as possible. And so it's great to see that engagement and involvement and dialogue.
Very good. Any other questions or comments, councillors? Okay, seeing none, thank you
Excellent.
again very much, Kevin, and we look forward to an easier process going forward for you, but seeing you again, of course, in the future.
Excellent. Well, thank you, and Mr. Brown, I will follow up specifically with you on some of the typos and specific things that. Excellent. Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we will call up our next delegation, and that is Deb Swidrovich. Yeah? Okay. Very good. My apologies if I do mispronounce. I am dyslexic, so reading new names is sometimes I like to switch letters around, but you will have
to apologize with your name too, so we'll give it a try anyway. Good evening, Mayor Salonen, councillor, staff, and guests. My name is Deb Swidrovich. I live at 720 the Wilmot Line in Waterloo. I'm here tonight to discuss procedural bylaw to 2023 and the proposed changes by staff and possible changes mentioned by council at your last meeting. The reason I'm here tonight is to inform this council about the process that has been undertaken by staff and the public, including myself, with regard to the redrafting of this bylaw. We have made great strides since the days when notices were provided to councillors in binders and not available to the public until late on a Friday afternoon prior to a Monday morning. Over the years, we have met with staff and council numerous times trying to get the procedural bylaw to a place that would reasonably allow the public and council sufficient time to prepare for discussion on items on the agenda. We also worked hard to include residents outside the township to be heard. After all the time and work that had previously gone into the procedural bylaw, I was shocked to hear the suggestion that Wilmot Township residents should only be given the opportunity to delegate before council. This certainly isn't what I have experienced in any of the council chambers where I have requested to be heard. I think this would be limited thinking, a big step backwards, and simply a bad solution to controlling the numbers of some of the more intense meetings. There has to be a better solution other than restricting the delegations to only locals. And I think that my surprise comes from a history with and my connection to Wilmot. Just to give you some background, I live on the City of Waterloo side of Wilmot Line at the north end. Granted, this road is 100% owned by the township, which is unusual for a boundary road. But as a resident on the line, every decision that you make in this council chambers regarding this area affects my family. My children went to North Wilmot Public School, Wilmot Senior Public School, and Waterloo Oxford High School. My children played on your baseball, soccer, and hockey teams. I shop in your stores, visit your restaurants, are treated by your health professionals, and support your functions. We own a business and have worked in many of the homes in your area, and many of our dear neighbors and close family friends reside here. Just to give you an idea of the involvement I've had with the township and why I feel so connected to you over the years and why I would hope to be given the same consideration when I come to council, I will share with you some of the history that I've had at these council chambers. To the benefit of the township, there have been a number of us who reside outside of the township and have shown up time and time again to either support or challenge decisions made in these chambers. We have had healthy discussions and actively promoted a number of issues, including the establishment of the Lower Creek environmentally sensitive landscape and the protection it would afford the Township of Wilmot, a regional committee that I served on since inception. We have worked on the cross-border fire services agreement between the township and the City of Waterloo after my neighbors across the road were killed in a fire. We also worked with Waterloo's fire chief to add more Wilmot homes that were not included originally under the proposed agreement. We have promoted better relationships between the City of Waterloo and Township of Wilmot by arranging meetings and functions with councillors from both sides and taking them on tours to discuss issues of mutual concern. For example, the protection of Wilmot Line and the environmentally sensitive lands, including Schneider's Woods. We have also supported and actively campaigned with many of the councillors in the Township of Wilmot who were successful at acquiring seats. We have presented at Wilmot Township Council to advise staff of our traffic and road concerns for Wilmot Line, including speed, signage, and safety issues, including the corner of Wilmot Line and Cedar Grove Road, which unfortunately were challenged in court, resulting in a $1.5 million settlement paid by the township when a young woman was killed and the driver was injured. We work with a number of volunteers who have taken pictorial inventories of species within the township and the city of Waterloo and brought attention to environmental concerns like invasive species and road construction that was threatening the home pond of Blanding's turtles. As you can see, I care about the township, and that is why I'm here tonight, to ensure that those of us who live outside of the township will have the opportunity to contribute on issues like the procedural bylaws and to bring what we have experienced elsewhere to these council chambers. Now, with respect to the edits to the provincial bylaw, if I can bring your attention to 7.9.2a, I would like to see the wording changed from may be heard with leave of the mayor or chair to something that would ensure that a person will be heard. The option for the chair to deny is made possible by the use of the words may be heard with leave of. If someone has been allowed to register to delegate on an issue, that person shouldn't be turned down. At times, it is difficult to meet with councillors and get answers from staff prior to pulling together a presentation to submit earlier. And the time limit in 7.9.2b, the time limit of 7 minutes is good, 10 would be even better. And also, instead of looking to reduce time when delegate numbers are high, I have seen other councils schedule subsequent dates to handle the numbers or daytime meetings as well. When you limit speakers to 5 minutes and especially 3 minutes, it's ridiculously little time to make a point. And there's a minor correction in 7.9.6b, should read written comments received less than 5 business days should be included. All in all, these procedural bylaws are coming along nicely. Thank you for welcoming me into your council chambers to speak tonight. I truly appreciate the opportunity to work with the township on the myriad of issues that affect not only the residents of the Township of Wilmot, but also those of us who live next door. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deb, for your comments. And now, granted, council may also want to make comment. I do think that the point, and I know that you prepared this in advance, but the point about delegations not being within the township was more in the spirit of discussion and conversation and was not moved as a topic item, but I do very much appreciate your comments and contributions to that conversation.
I just thought that it might be discussed again, brought up again, so I wanted to make clear that it's important to have outside input. Mm-hmm.
Most certainly. And one thing to that I would actually take the opportunity, as we do actually have a member of the media here with us, which is really exciting to have in person, is also, I would say, I would call on our media to report in a way that does expand for those who aren't at the full meeting, that not to make it seem that topics maybe are misconstrued where people do get the wrong idea, because we are really working amongst this council to have open discussion, whether that results in a final decision. But I think as part of our communications plan, both internally, but also working with our local media to help people be better informed, that we could ask on our media to ensure that we're getting really great coverage. And a wholesome discussion of what the topic is and how it resulted. But on that note, I will ask if councillors have any other questions or comments of Deb. Councillor Cressman.
I would just say you are to be commended. I wish everyone was as highly involved as you are. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I echo Councillor Cressman's comments. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. There's one thing I'd like to add, if I could. You're asking how other council chambers handle people in the room who wish to speak. Like Kevin said, the City of Waterloo, where I spend a lot of my time, actually allows us, and this isn't just for meetings where you're required to ask, is there anybody else that wants to speak on this issue? You're supposed to ask that question. I can often, if I'm in a room and I'm ready to present on something else and an issue comes up, and I hear something that's not quite right and I want to speak to it, I can simply put my hand up, and as long as they see my hand, they'll say, Deb, do you want to speak on this? And I said, I'd like to, just for a few minutes, and they allow you to do that, which is very welcoming, and they often will ask too, and when they don't have to, is there anybody else that would like to speak on this? So that's a very welcoming feeling. It really does feel good when you get that response from council. Anyway, thank you very much.
I appreciate that, and I will have to say, I did actually make note when Kevin mentioned that, so I have it noted to ask my staff that we can add that into the script. And with that, I was going to step into the next point of, is there anybody else here who would like to speak on this? But thank you very much for coming, Deb. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak on this topic? Okay. Seeing none. Councillors, a final question, comments? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair, and thank you to Mrs. Fedorowicz. I think this is a prime example of why we have these conversations. And to your point, you do live in Waterloo. However, you have a vested interest because of where you're located, where the border is, and I appreciate that. And that isn't necessarily something that had crossed my mind when having that conversation initially, but I think ultimately through power of discussion and debate, we came to that conclusion. So to echo my colleagues, I commend you. Thank you for coming here. I did want to make just a brief statement. I don't think by any means we were looking to disenfranchise voters or change our democracy fundamentally. It was a discussion surrounding the value and emphasis we put on the voices of the people who live in Wilmot Township, and whether or not we allow non-residents to have a say in our business. And I think tonight we've shown that there can be pros all around, and ultimately there are healthy debate and topic that need to be discussed, and we can reach conclusions based on a variety of opinions. So just to reiterate and clarify, we're not changing this procedural item at all. We'll certainly take input from anyone, and there are great ideas out there that we aren't considering, and case in point, fire services on Wilmot Line. Something that's very important, the safety and well-being of all citizens of this area, especially when services are at stake. I will say, when it comes to important township decisions, I represent the folks of Ward 2, and further to that, the people of Wilmot, and I do put some emphasis and value on what Wilmot residents are bringing forward. So I will encourage everyone, regardless of where you live, you can call us, you can email us, you can reach us, you can write and have your opinion noted on the record. So I would encourage you to do that. And thank you to Mayor Salonen for bringing up the topic of media coverage. And I will say that I think our last meeting regarding this conversation could have used a little more context and fact and outcome, and it wasn't necessarily representative of our meeting. So caution to read headlines, maybe with a small disclaimer, and dig in a little deeper into the actual meeting and the outcome of there. And yeah, I just thank my colleagues for having the conversation and everyone for being here this evening. So everyone is welcome here at Wilmot Council, and we'll continue to stand by that.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Deb, I'm sorry, I dismissed you before. My clerk just wanted clarification on those two line items that you had. If you're staying, if you could just speak to our deputy clerk right here. Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, on that note, nobody else said that they wanted to speak on that in the audience or in my council, so we will now call the vote. Just a reminder, this is received tonight for information, so it will be coming back yet again, and with the contributed ideas hopefully reflected in the appropriate way, and the continued conversation that our clerks are expecting as well. So thank you for the vibrant discussion, everybody, and we will now call the vote. All those in favor of receiving for information, and that's carried unanimously. In terms of correspondence, we have two items of correspondence this evening. I did actually want to quickly pull item 13.1, which was the petition regarding traffic calming on Livingston Boulevard and Baden area. And I wanted to pull it to ask Director Molynhuis just to shed some light. I know that we have some scheduled programming in that area. If you could speak to that, please.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. I guess briefly, in the 2023 budget, we did have an allocation for a staff resource to address traffic calming, and more so towards a program that we need to establish. We do have a number of locations of traffic calming requests, so there's quite a backlog of those reviews, and they are extensive undertakings and can be extensive undertakings due to, a few items in particular. Field review and data that has to be collected, and second, that there is a component of how to go about implementing traffic calming features, as sometimes they can have unintended consequences, especially on neighborhoods, when implementing them in sort of a one-off or a two-off type of scenario. So to that point, yes, we do see that there is obviously the petition on this evening, and we do know that there are program elements that we need to develop. And as noted before, we do need time to bring a policy back, and prioritization is another element that comes with that as well, considering the volume of requests that we have in front of us. So.
Thank you. So just to clarify, this petition, I mean, beyond it being a petition, that is one of the areas that is currently in the queue for review.
Yes, through you, Mayor. That is correct. When we do receive correspondence, whether it is a petition or someone calling in to request, we do have a list of locations, and this certainly is added to the list.
That's great. Thank you very much. Councillors, anybody else have comments or questions on correspondence? Okay, Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair, just a general comment. I think in reading that petition, I'm encouraged by the citizens that are speaking up on this matter. I think we've seen an unfortunate incident that's taken place on Snyder's Road, which is a regional speed control measure, which was sad to see. But ultimately, I think I can speak for all of us here when we agree that we need additional speed control measures more than ever. And I don't think we should leave any stone unturned. So if that's speed bumps or limiting parking or lowering speed limits, I think everything should be on the table. And I hope that we can continue to work with our regional partners to further develop some of these strategies on our regional roads that specifically in the rural areas that suffer from speeding and safety concerns.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I want to say thank you. Mr. Bowman's here tonight. He wrote a letter to us, and also the people that signed the petition. I think it's great that people have put energy into expressing concerns. These are important concerns. I also want to thank Councillor Dunstall for some of her work in corresponding with the Waterloo Regional Police. Wasn't that long ago that when the police were at a certain road, they impounded at least one or two cars from people speeding. And so I think this is important. I heard about it during the election. Many people are concerned about different roads where people are not driving appropriately. So this is an important topic.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. And I'd like to echo what everyone here has said. There are a couple of statistics that are a little disturbing, and one of those is that 40% of deaths on the roads in the Waterloo region occur in the townships. And considering our population is so much less than what the larger municipalities have, that is upsetting and disturbing. So we are aware of that as a council. We're working with the police, and I know Director Mullenhouse is on top of it as well. So I just want to reassure the public we understand, we know it's a serious issue, and that we're working on it. Thank you.
And just to add to that, actually, council was delegating at our AMO. We did have a delegation specifically on how do we improve traffic calming both in our neighborhoods and on our rural roads. So that's something that we're continuing the conversation with the province as well. Very good. Any other comments or questions then? Did you want to say something on your? Sure.
Loud voice, so I don't think I need it. It's Merv Bowman, B-O-W-M-A-N.
Merv, just before you speak, I'm being told, so my hands don't get slapped, I just need a resolution for you to speak under our current procedural bylaws. So council, may I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? Wonderful. Welcome. Thank you for joining us, Mark.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. As part of the letter, I had asked you, Madam Mayor, if you would echo the concerns with Waterloo Region and bring forth the petition to them as well. Hopefully, at some point or other, you can acknowledge that, or Mr. Bunt, you could do it as well, I suppose. But please keep me informed, and certainly I'll go back to the petitioners and advise them of any updates that I learn from council. I certainly appreciate any attention that your learned staff or any of the councillors can input. I spent 35 years in the RCMP in general duty policing in Saskatchewan, British Columbia, and Ontario uniform. So I have a wealth of experience in policing, and if there's any which way that I can help Wilmot Township solve the issues, I'll certainly offer any help or assistance I can give council. So that's basically it.
Thank you very much. My apologies for not communicating. I have already passed it along to our regional clerks and advised how can we get that onto a council agenda. So I'm just waiting response on what that looks like. So I will keep you informed on that through Clerk Bunn, as he has your contact information.
And maybe just one other point, if I may. I think it's of a major concern that Waterloo Regional Police is no longer in our community, in the sense that there's no longer an office, as you well know, in New Hamburg, and I know only too well how important small town policing is to have people present, even from the standpoint of intelligence gathering, and I mean that in a good way, as far as police officers being local, that they can spend time to get to know the young people, the younger adult teenagers, or pardon me, the older adult teenagers, or those in their 20s, mid-20s, that type of thing. That is what policing is all about, and unless the region is willing to offer more policing in this community, things are only going to get worse. So, with that,
Just on that one, I actually did have a meeting with the sergeant who is the community engagement officer. They're currently doing a review of their youth engagement strategy, including doing a specific focus on rural youth engagement. And I continue to beat the drum with the police chief of we need to get a station back out here. And we just, in the meantime, before that happens, continue to increase policing services. So I'm right there with you on that one. And continuing along, but thank you very much for joining us and for your comments. Okay, Council, nothing needs to be voted on as that was correspondence. There are no bylaws until the confirmatory bylaw later on. No notice of motions. We do have a few announcements to get through. This one is actually kind of related to the other item of correspondence, which is the Township of Wilmot and the Wilmot Family Resource Centre are teaming up to offer youth programs in Wilmot, and we're looking for ideas. So youth in Wilmot grades 4 through to 12 are invited to attend one of the open houses to tell us what the youth programming should be in Wilmot. There are going to be 3 open houses available where staff will be ready for your feedback, and that includes Monday, September the 18th at the Youth Centre, which is located at the Wilmot Recreation Complex on Nafzinger. That will be between 6 and 8 p.m. Also Thursday, September 21st at the Wilmot Family Resource Centre, and that will be between 6 and 8 p.m. And Friday, September 22nd at the New Hamburg Arena, which is on Jacob Street, I believe, which is 6 to 8 p.m. And for more information, or if you can't attend one of those events but you want to make comments, please contact Lacey Smith. She's the Supervisor of Recreation Programming at 519-634-9225, extension 9361. Or you can also find that on our website or come into the Township office and we will connect you with her. The second item is that the second week of September is Mennonite Heritage Week. This week is an opportunity to learn more about Mennonite Canadians, their unique history, vibrant culture, and their contributions that they have helped to shape our country. The presence of Mennonites in what is now Canada dates back to the late 1700s. They came to this country to escape war and persecution in other lands, risking everything to come to a place where they would be safe, free to practice their faith and live their lives in peace. The history of Mennonites and the ability to contribute to building an open, welcoming, and prosperous society is a testament to the values they hold dear. And these values also resonate with Canadian values. Item C is that we are committed to safety of our children and our entire community, and in light of this commitment, we do want to again remind all motorists of the reduced speed limits in our school zones. There are signs posted on all the school zones to remind drivers of the reduced speed limits and hours during which they apply, and please do look out for these signs and comply accordingly. And just a note that I'm going off script, my staff might be mad at me, but the vandalism that happened to the speed camera out in front of Sir Adam Beck's school is really unfortunate as a community, and also is costing our community more, and financially speaking. It is a program to keep our community safe, and unfortunately speeding does happen in front of schools, and that was identified as a high item, a high priority area due to the structure of that road. So please, really, in all seriousness, for the kids in our community and their safety, and the safety of those who work in those spaces as well, reduce your speed limits. And then lastly, which kind of ties into this, is crossing guards. Crossing guards play a vital role in ensuring the safety of our children and pedestrians as they cross busy streets near our schools. The Township of Wilmot is continuing the recruitment of crossing guards, providing this important opportunity for you to make a significant difference in your community. So we look forward to welcoming dedicated individuals to our team and working together to keep our streets safe. For more information, please check out the wilmot.ca/jobs posting. And I believe Councillor Martin also had an announcement, and then I will get to the rest of you.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. I was asked by a young adult in our township to highlight Consent Awareness Week. Next week, September 18 to 22, is Consent Awareness Week. It is being highlighted on university and college campuses across the country. But it's also important throughout the township and throughout our community that we raise awareness about consent awareness. Did you know that less than half of people in Canada fully understand what it means to give consent? Responding to calls from High School 2 last year, Possibility Seeds Courage to Act project established a national consent awareness week with community partners across the country, running annually during the third week of September. And so it's important that we recognize that without consent, there's an increase in sexual violence, and so sexual violence it's important that we highlight that and talk about it, and raise awareness so that people recognize what it means to give consent.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Cressman.
Yes, I would bring attention to the fact that the Wilmot Agriculture Society is holding the annual fair at Norm Hill Park this weekend. And just a side note, Norm Hill taught my mother at SS number 8, Rosebank, and was our vice principal at Waterloo Oxford in my time at Waterloo Oxford. So it's something when you have an educator who spanned 2 generations and is remembered in one of our parks. So I would bring your attention to that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just to further on my colleague's comment about the fall fair, it actually takes place Friday to Sunday. They have a full midway on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And there is a fall fair book on their website, New Hamburg Fall Fair. You can take a look at all the events that are taking place. And I will be emceeing the opening ceremonies on Friday at 6:45. So we look forward to seeing everyone there.
Thank you very much. Any other announcements that Council wants to bring up? Okay, seeing none, business arising from closed session. It's that council receives as information a confidential verbal report regarding confidential information supplied in confidence from the Province of Ontario, Section 239-2H, information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board of Canada, a province or territory, or a crown agency of any item, and Section 239-2I, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization. May I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favor? And that is business from closed. Confirmatory bylaw is, the recommendation is attached to the agenda to be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed in open council. May I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. And finally, adjournment. May I please have a mover? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Dunstall. All those in favor? Thank you very much for attending, and have a good night.